Welcome back to The Bottom Line. As you know, we are covering the local elections that are coming up in Long Island, New York in November. In preparation for that, we are speaking with various candidates that are up for election or re-election this term. One such individual is joining me now, Mr. John Ferretti, who is currently holding the position of Nassau County Legislator for the 15th District, and you're running for re-election. Mr. Ferretti, first of all, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me, Aashmeeta.
Absolutely. We won't waste any time. Let's get right into it. You've already held this seat, you've done some work, and now you're seeking re-election. Before we get into why you should be re-elected by the constituency, tell us, what is your background in local politics?
Sure. Well, I've lived in Levittown all my life, and that's the majority of my district. It encompasses all of Levittown, all of Salisbury, parts of Bethpage, Wantaw, Seaford, and East Meadow. But the big majority of my district is Levittown. That's where I grew up. After attending public school in Levittown, graduating high school from Division Avenue, I went to Hofstra University for college. I went to law school. I graduated law school. I was actually studying for the bar exam when I looked out my bedroom window, and a house 2 doors down went for sale. Well, 10 years later, that's the house that I bought with my now wife. We've had our 2 children, and I've been part of the community my entire life. It's where I've always lived. So it was really a commitment to that community, the desire to represent my friends, neighbors, and family in that community that really drew me to politics and government. And I've been in government now. It's scary to say it, but I've been part of government for almost 20 years.
Wow, and you started pretty young, did you not?
Yeah, well, actually, my first experience with government was when I interned for, actually, at the time, my predecessor, legislator Dennis Dunn, who was the county legislator in the area for 22 years. And when I was 16 years old, I got an opportunity to intern in Dennis Dunn's office, and I gained a lot of experience from that. And so it goes back as far as when I was 16 years old.
When people ask you, why local government, what is the first thing that pops in your mind?
The first thing that pops in my mind is because you can make a difference in people's everyday lives. I mean, everybody pays a lot of attention to what's going on the national level, internationally, but really local government is so important to your everyday life. Local government is who decides your property taxes, who's maintaining and just making decisions on our parks. Local government at the school board level are making decisions on our children's education. So local government is what we deal with on an everyday basis, and that's really what got me intrigued with it.
So in your current position, you've already been holding this seat. Tell our viewers a little bit about what you've been able to accomplish.
Sure. Well, I'm really proud of the almost 2 years now that I've been in office. If you talk to residents around Nassau County, there's many issues that they face, but taxes are number one, always. And aside from already passing one budget with no property tax increase, I've also successfully fought against the current county executive's proposal to tax little leagues.
Okay.
I led the charge against that, and we were successful in passing a law that reversed her Little League tax.
Okay.
Additionally, people are always complaining about our county roads. In my first term, I've secured funding for 5 county roads in my district, which is half of the county roads in my district, to be completely repaved. One of them is already completely repaved. Obviously, you secure the funding, but it takes some time to actually get the work done. Actually, last week they completed work on Carmen Avenue, which had been a disaster.
Yes.
Another success, I believe, in the first 2 years, and one of the biggest complaints I got were people getting unfair red light camera tickets. Many complaints about unfair red light camera tickets where people may have made a complete stop before making a right on red, but they made that stop just a few feet over the white line, and sometimes that white line wasn't even there. It was eroded away.
Yeah.
I introduced a bill that passed unanimously in the legislature that requires signage to be placed at every intersection with a red light camera. And specifically, if there's a right turn on red that's allowed, there has to be a new sign that says must stop here, pointing down to that white line. And the white line actually has to exist.
Okay.
So no longer in Nassau County can you get a camera ticket for not stopping at a non-existent line.
Very nice.
So all that, there's plenty more that the Republican majority has really gotten fought for their constituents. But just aside from that, I really take great pride in constituent service. I'm very, very visual. whether it be on social media. I'm very responsive to my constituents. I make
Okay.
I make a point of either responding to every email personally or making that phone call back to every constituent that calls personally. I've held over 20 community meetings where I've attended them personally throughout my district, whether it be on the reassessment, dangerous bike riding, bike helmets. There's so many things we had meeting on. We had a issue with rodents in the community. We've tackled that issue.
Okay.
I really take great pride in it, and I'm proud of the work that I've accomplished so far.
Speaking of the community, so your district in particular, and even the town of Hempstead, Nassau County as a whole, is not just diverse, but increasingly so. People are coming here, settling down, raising their families, and essentially chasing the American dream. Speaking directly to our audience comprising of the South Asian community, what can you tell them about your work in this space?
Absolutely. Our diversity is what makes us great, not only in this country, but of course in Nassau County as well. And we do see an ever a more diverse community than we've seen ever before. And I grew up in Levittown, not to age myself, but I'm 36 years old. So I've been in Nassau County for 36 years. And yeah, it's definitely, Levittown has become more diverse. And, I have little children. My daughter's 2, my son's 7, and that's a great thing. I mean, that's what we want. We want diversity. That's what makes us American. That's what makes us great. And we've really embraced that in the majority. We've created an Office of Asian American Affairs. And that's going to go a long way in making sure the needs of all communities are met. And that's our goal.
Speaking about now, this is a nice recap of what you've done. Let's talk a little bit about if you get reelected. What can your constituents hope to see in your next term should you win that seat?
Sure. Well, an issue that really affects every community, regardless of race, religion, creed, is the reassessment and property taxes. And that's something that's really at the forefront of my agenda going forward. We have the administration has done a countywide reassessment, as everyone knows. The misconception is that any elected official, at least that I'm aware of, was opposed to a reassessment. Everybody knows we need to do a reassessment. The assessment system was broken. But the way that this administration has gone about implementing that reassessment, that's where you see discussion and adversarial situation, because in my opinion this reassessment has been done in the least transparent, most incompetent way possible. And as a result, about 95% of residents that would have been protected by tax protections in state law will not see those protections. And so when this reassessment takes effect next year, there are going to be residents that face a larger tax increase, in my opinion, than they should. They're not aware of it. They haven't been told about it. We've introduced an assessment bill of rights that brings transparency and fairness to this process. Unfortunately, just last week, the county executive vetoed each one of those bills. And so in about a week, we're going to be having a vote to try to override her vetoes of all of our bills.
This is County Executive Laura Gillum.
No, Laura Curran.
Laura Curran, gotcha.
Yeah, so she vetoed each one of those bills that would have brought transparency and fairness to the process. We are going to attempt to override that veto. In order to do so, we will need 2 members of the legislature that are in the minority to join us to override that veto. So it'll be a tough order, but I think it's really important that people understand what the Bill of Rights are. There are numerous bills. I won't get into every one of them, but just to touch on a few. I've held 20 town hall meetings. 13 of them have been on reassessment in my one district. Okay, not less than 100 people, residents, have showed up to each one of those meetings. The county assessor and the county executive have hosted 0 throughout all of Nassau County. Residents don't know what's going on. Additionally, our assessor, he's not even a resident of Nassau County. So just for example, 2 of the bills that we put forward would require the assessor to be a Nassau resident. Another bill would be that the assessor has to have a meeting in each township. So the town of Hempstead, the town of North Hempstead, the town of Oyster Bay, just 1 meeting a year to interact with residents and let them know what's going on. One of the other bills would have been that the Department of Assessment has to have somebody answering phones, because right now nobody's answering the phones. And yet the county executive vetoed all of these. So we do have the override veto vote scheduled, and I would encourage my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to get on board with our Bill of Rights and bring transparency and fairness to the reassessment process, as that will affect every community in Nassau County.
Really quickly, what sets you apart from your challenger?
Well, I'm not that familiar with my challenger, to be totally honest with you, but I can tell you that my experience certainly would set me apart from my challenger. Like I've told you before, I have almost 20 years in government. Prior to being an elected official, I was the Chief Deputy County Clerk of Nassau County, where we managed a $6 million budget. I oversaw over 100 employees. I've been part of government for a long time. I know government. I know how government works. I'm an attorney. I know the laws. I know how to create laws. So I think if you look at the experience of both myself and my opponent, there's a clear distinction there.
With that, in closing, I want you to tell our viewers why they should vote for you on coming up Election Day and how they should get the vote out.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I would just thank you for first electing me 2 years ago. It's been a great privilege to be your county legislator. And I want to continue doing what I've been doing. I want to continue making you a stakeholder in the process. I want to hear you. Your voice is as important as mine and anyone else's. And I believe that if we work together, we can hold the line on property taxes, we could fix the county executive's broken reassessment, and we can continue fighting to keep our communities safe. And to get the vote out, please remember that voting starts early this year on October 26th, right through November 3rd. There's early voting. Levittown Hall is one of the places you can go vote. November 4th, there's no voting, but then Election Day is November 5th. So get your friends, get your family out.
Thank you so much for speaking with us. John Ferretti, currently holding the seat of Nassau County Legislator in the 15th District and up for re-election. We wish you all the best. And for our viewers, stay tuned. Our coverage on the local elections in Long Island will continue. This is The Bottom Line. Welcome back to The Bottom Line. I'm Aashmeeta, and this is our ongoing coverage of the upcoming elections in Long Island, New York. Now I'm sitting with arguably someone at the higher end of the food chain, so to speak, Mr. Richard Nicolello, the presiding officer of the Nassau County Legislature. Rich, first of all, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate you taking the time out. I'd like to welcome you to our program.
Well, thank you very much for being here. I wouldn't characterize myself as the higher end, actually. The more time you put in politics, the more you realize it's all about serving people. So it's more in the lower end than the higher end.
That's very refreshing to hear. Rich, you are described by many, especially in the South Asian community, by some of the community activists and leaders, such as Bobby Kumar, as someone who is extremely active, a friend of the South Asian community, and someone that can be called upon. How did you come to be that person?
Well, I live in the community of New Hyde Park, which has become increasingly diverse over the years, and most of my neighbors are Indian Americans, and we actually have a large Asian population as well. So when I think about issues involving the community, I'm thinking about my neighbors and people that I see every day and that are friends of mine. So we've been focusing on that in the legislature. This past year, we created something called the Asian American Office, for Office of Asian American Affairs. It has a council that serves to provide advisory content. But basically, I believe it's the first time in New York State. It's actually a governmental office that is focused on taking care of the needs, attending to the needs, and highlighting, what the Asian Americans are doing for our county and our country. So it's a major achievement, and we're really pleased with it.
Thank you for that. Before we get into specifically what you've done in your term last few years and what you hope to accomplish moving forward, tell us, how long have you been involved in local politics?
I have been on the legislature since 1996. Actually, the legislature was brand new in 1995. I ran for the first legislature, and I was one of the 19 that were elected to the first Nassau County Legislature. So it was a very exciting time creating a new form of government here in Nassau County. And I've been there, since, serving the people.
What would you say has been the tantamount change that you've seen over, several decades now in this seat?
I think the major change that has happened in the county is the change in the population. And it's not just Asians, but also Hispanic Americans, and various ethnic groups are increasingly becoming a majority, or will become a majority in the county real soon. But we've also seen those groups become represented more so in local government and become more active. We've seen leaders rise up and be able to speak for the community, which is really something that's very exciting. It's something that the county has gone through, as with different groups over the years. You know, Irish Americans and Italian Americans were doing the same thing 60 years ago. And when we finally elected an Italian American to government, who was Frank Gallardo, the DA, again, years ago, it was a major achievement. But that's happening now, and it's very exciting to see as well for the emerging groups.
Tell us and our audience a little bit about your recent term and how you would characterize your biggest accomplishments.
We, for the first time, I think, in probably 15 years or so, we have a divided government. We have a county executive who's Democrat and a Republican majority legislature. So we had to figure out how to work with a member of, of the opposition party, so to speak. And we've had a tremendous amount of cooperation on a variety of things. At the same time, we are the party in opposition, and when we don't see things that we like or think that things are going wrong, we've stood up and spoken for our positions. The major issue of the last couple of years has been reassessment. So we actually authorized it to go forward, understanding that the county's assessment system had gotten out of control and the values were not accurate anymore. But it was rolled out in such a way that people weren't getting the information, that people were confused about it, there were errors. So we've stood and we've proposed changes and we've advocated for more openness and transparency. So I'd say, if anything, for the last 2 years, I think that's been our hallmark, is to stand up for the residents and say, when the administration is not doing things correctly, and say, you should be doing this better, and then fighting for the residents.
So when people look at places like Nassau County or Long Island as a whole, they see somewhere they're going to put down their roots, they're going to settle down, raise a family, have their kids go to some of the best schools in the country, arguably. How do you balance that with the business interests that also want a piece of the pie?
It's actually, I think there's mutual interests of the residents as well as businesses. Without a strong, vibrant business community, the taxation burden on residents would be overwhelming. So you need businesses to be contributing to their taxes. You need the jobs, because especially for younger people, they need to have a future. They need to earn an income that's going to allow them to live in this area. It's so expensive. So so it works together. I mean, it is a major issue that we're concerned about in Nassau County. New York State sees the highest number of people fleeing the state of any state in the country. So we have to make our county more affordable. We have to take care of the housing needs of seniors and young people, and we have to make sure the jobs are there for for millennials and young families who want to start out here.
Coming back a little bit to the South Asian community, like we mentioned earlier, you've been very involved with the needs of this particular demographic. One of the things that they hold very dear are places of worship. Tell us a little bit about the work that you've done in that space.
Actually, there's a tremendous diversity, even in my own community, in terms of houses of worship. I'd say the majority of New Hyde Park are probably Malayali community, who are Christians. There is a Vaishnav temple who have a 15-year relationship with I view them as like brothers and sisters, and we're so close. We have the Hillside Islamic Center, so we have a Muslim community growing. But again, I harken back to the days when it was Irish and Italian immigrants. It was centered around their faith and the churches. But the same thing is happening now, and it's an important part of the community, and we have to encourage people to do that. I think it's better for our government, it's better for our area when people are active in their, practicing their faith.
So now the million-dollar question, should you get reelected, what does the next term look like?
I think we have to continue to work on the assessment issue to make sure that the values are fair. There are some 240,000 challenges out there to people's assessments, so we have to monitor that. I mean, it could be a huge exposure to the county. And we really have to focus, as we have in the past, on affordability. Again, people are leaving. It's too expensive to live here. We have to worry about losing our young people. There was an article in Newsday a couple of weeks ago that millennials are leaving at a higher rate than ever before because there's not the jobs, it's too expensive. So we in government have to focus on making sure that we do everything possible to keep those tax rates down, make it a little bit more affordable.
Sounds like you've got your work cut out for you. So, in closing, we wish you all the best of luck. You've certainly been around long enough that folks can place their confidence in you. But to that end, I'd like you to tell our viewers essentially why they should vote you back in and keep you doing the job you're doing, and if they can, how they should get the vote out.
Okay. I'll tackle the last part first. It's all about grassroots. It's a local election, so people generally come out to vote for president or governor, and they tend to skip the local elections, which are actually much more important for your quality of life. Your local government controls much more of your day-to-day existence and the roads and the police and all of that type of stuff. So it's a matter of reminding people, it's talking to your friends and relatives and trying to urge them to come out to vote. There was early voting this year, so it's more of an opportunity to get out before Election Day and to go to a place that's convenient to you and to cast your ballot. So I'd like to continue to serve, to represent the people. Again, my focus is on trying to hold the line on taxes, try to create more jobs for people, look at housing opportunities. I mean, Mineola is a great example of them building transit-oriented development that has not impacted the schools, but has brought a new opportunities for people to move into the community or to stay there if they want to move out of home. So there's a lot to do, and I'm really excited about being part of it.
Wonderful. Once again, we wish you all the best of luck in this endeavor. That was Mr. Rich Nicolello running for re-election for the seat of presiding officer in the Nassau County Legislature. This has been The Bottom Line. This is our ongoing coverage of the local elections taking place on Long Island, New York, coming up at the end of the month and in November. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Bottom Line on our continuing coverage on the local elections taking place in Long Island, New York. I am now joined by Miss Rosemarie Walker, who is sweeter than she looks, a testament to what helping communities on a local level can do, and a career public servant. Rose, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate having you on our show.
Thank you so very much.
Absolutely. Before we get started, Rose, you've had, over a decade of experience in local politics. Tell us a little bit about what you've been doing.
Well, first of all, I've been involved in my community for many, many, many years. I grew up here in the Hicksville community. My husband, God rest his soul, and I raised our children here, and now I have 4 little grandchildren who are living here also. So we are very, very much a very big part of this community. And I've always been involved. I've been active in our church, and I've been active in our school activities and PTA, and certainly all the clubs and organizations that are in Hicksville. I'm a member of the Hicksville Ladies Auxiliary in the fire department, and I learned very young from my parents how important it is to give back to the community and be a big part of the community. And so becoming an elected official was kind of just the next step. I served on the school board after, I was in PTA, and like I said, I served on the Hicksville School Board for a short time. And then my name was submitted to run for office, and I did. And, it's really an extension of what I've been doing for many, many years. And, it's to be able to help people in many, many aspects, be it questions they have regarding their taxes or just, issues within their community, and you can help them and direct those to the proper person that needs to address them is, it does your heart good to see that good things can happen when we work together.
Well, that's just lovely to hear. So, Rose, you are currently the Nassau County Legislator for District 17.
Yes.
You've held this seat for
For just finishing up my 10th year as a legislator.
Years. Wonderful. Tell us a little bit about what some of your key accomplishments have included.
Well, presently, like I said, we've been very, very much focus has been on the assessment, and the Hicksville community has been hit very hard with that. So that is a very, very big issue. But I chair the Health and Social Services Committee, so that has been very dear to my heart, and working with the health department, addressing many, many health issues from when I first came on board, and we had the flu epidemic and dealing with that, and what can we do to help our residents, but in every aspect, working with our seniors, making sure that they are aware of problems that happen, that they can easily be scammed by, or and we bring many of those things right to our local community. We have a lot of different workshops that they can come to right here, right in the Hicksville Library, or over in Bethpage, in the Bethpage Library. I represent Plain Edge, so we do things over there. North Massapequa the same. But, and I always tell them when we're there for any issue, please reach out to me if there's anything else you can think of that we can bring to you closer to home, because especially as our population, the older population, they to travel into Mineola where parking isn't the greatest is a very big issue for them. Certainly public safety. I work very, very hard with our police departments, and we've tried to give them all that they need to be able to, do the job that they have to do to protect us. And certainly now we've just passed legislation to address the mental aspect of it. Very, very sadly this week we lost one of our officers due to suicide, and what can we do to help them? Their job is very, very stressful. They deal with all the stresses that we deal with on a daily basis, but added to that in their job, and whatever we can do to help them. Infrastructure, addressing the roads and all our facilities, and certainly for me in this district, a very, very big issue too is our water, the quality of our water. Unfortunately, we have many contaminants that we have to face, and so that is a very big issue. Having Bethpage and Hicksville, a big part of my district, addressing the Grumman Navy plume that has kind of not really been addressed the way it should have been. Absolutely. And, we're just fighting for every bit of that and to finally get that cleaned up and all the other issues that we have to deal with.
Your district is Hicksville. Encompasses Hicksville.
Yes.
Hicksville has one of the most quickly, increasingly advancing South Asian populations.
Yes, we do.
In Long Island. You've been described by some as a shepherd, heralding in new immigrants and kind of helping them, get their feet on the ground. Tell us about your experience with the South Asian community.
Well,
in Hicksville.
I've been involved, like I said, for within our community for a very, very long time. I still do our sports over at the high school. I do the boys JV and varsity boys basketball, their official book. I do their lacrosse clock and book. But it keeps me involved in our community. I'm still involved in PTA, and especially having young grandchildren in the district. And, we have had a South Asian population in Hicksville for many years. My children have dear, dear friends who they grew up with, and so they've lived here for a long time, and now a greater influx into our community. And helping them get established, helping them to know all the things we have available, and helping them to assimilate into our communities, and not just in Hicksville, but across Nassau County, and to be one big community, because working together, we can do so much more. And, and you want them to be able to feel that they are a part and very welcome in our community, and everything we can do to make sure that we all work together is very, very important.
I'm sure this segment of the population highly appreciates your work in that regard. Rose, in closing, tell our viewers why it is that they should get out the vote and what it is they need to do.
Well, it's very, very important, certainly, for everyone that is eligible to vote, to get out to vote. I try to stress that when I read to the little children. We read a book. I usually bring 2 books, and I let them vote on the book that we're going to read and explain to them, see how important your vote is, because sometimes a book wins by 1 vote. And very, very important that they understand that from the time they're very, very young. This year we have something new. We have early voting, which begins on October 26th. And so certainly there are 15 voting places that you can vote, and you don't, just because you normally vote in a particular school here in Hicksville or Bethpage or wherever it might be in my district or wherever it might be in your own district, early voting is 15 different places, and you can vote in any of those 15 places. So if that works better for you, please get out and do that. You have that opportunity. And, I'm very proud to have represented this district for the past 10 years as a legislator, and I hope that you all see fit to support me once again, and that I can return in January to continue my work here as a legislator.
Rosemary Walker, the current Nassau County legislator for District 17, up for re-election at the end of the month, and November 5th is the official election day. Make sure you get out, you cast your vote, and you choose some worthy candidates. Rose, thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. Wish you all the best of luck. This has been a special segment of The Bottom Line. Thank you. Welcome back to The Bottom Line. We are covering the local elections taking place on Long Island, New York, coming up at the end of the month and on November 5th, Election Day. I'm now joined by Ms. Laura Schaefer, the Nassau County legislator for District 14. Thank you so much for joining us, Laura.
Thank you for having me.
First, before we get started into your tenure, what you've done and what you hope to accomplish in your next term should you get reelected, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your district encompasses?
The areas my district encompasses, I actually am, I think, the only legislative district that encompasses parts of all three towns in the county. So we have town of Oyster Bay, which would be about Bethpage and Hicksville. There's a little bit of Jericho in there also. Town of North Hempstead, which is Westbury, village of Westbury where I live, Carl Place. And then I go into Hempstead. I have the biggest part of my district is Garden City, and then I have some of West Hempstead, a little bit of Franklin Square, and just some of the surrounding areas, a little bit of Hempstead.
As one of the longest serving legislators, tell us a little bit about what your job entails.
Well, my job entails obviously legislation, promoting or putting forth bills and resolutions that are there to help the community in some way, shape, or form. There's so many ways you can do that, and we've done that environmentally, and we've done that for, you know, whether it's children's safety or, you know, adult safety. So that's one part of it. We vote on, big part of the job is voting on the budget, county budget, which is a $3.1 or $2 billion budget. So we're actually in budget season now, technically, and that's when we pour through the budget books and we go through the numbers and we look for new sources of revenue, if we can find them for the county, because that's very important. And we also look for where we can find some efficiencies and make cuts, or, you know, make something, condense departments or whatever we might have to do to make sure that we meet the budget and that we still are able to provide the services that residents are used to, you know, getting from the county.
Absolutely. Your tenure spanning several years, how would you characterize it?
I guess, do you mean for
some of your key accomplishments? No, it's fine.
So, well, okay, so I guess I can, you know, dig in more recently. This last year or two has been very productive for me personally. I'm chair of the Planning, Development, and Environment Committee. So we've had a lot of issues. In my district specifically, especially Bethpage, we have the Navy Grumman plume. So there's a drinking water issue. I had a hearing back this past summer on the 1,4-dioxane issue. So that's a big issue that people are starting to become more aware of. Our water districts have been aware of it for many, many years, actually. They've been working on it, but it's something that has to be addressed in our drinking water. And they're on top of it. And my job, I feel, as a legislator, anything I can do to support the water districts to make sure that we're accomplishing the goals we need to accomplish to remove anything that may be a contaminant in the water, to assist them with getting funding to the extent we can, or requesting it from state or federal government. I've done that, and my colleagues in majority have done that as well with us. And just making sure that any of those types of issues are really addressed by us in whatever way we can address them. If there's legislation we can pass, we do it. If not, and it's just supporting, then that's what we do. So that's been one of the big issues in my district. Again, you know, the whole water issue is something that's, because water is fluid, you can't say it's in one area. It's not. You know, the plume is spread, and you know, so we have to be very vigilant about that.
A lot of your the towns and the specific localities that fall in your district have a strong and increasingly growing South Asian population. You've been described by many as a great friend to the South Asian community. In fact, community leaders and activists such as Bobby Kumar have personally spoken extremely highly of you. How would you how would you describe your work with the South Asian population?
So South Asian population, as you said, has grown, you know, very much in Long Island, and it's something that we should all embrace. I certainly have. I think diversity is a good thing. I've always grown up. I grew up in Westbury, and I still live there now. And one of the things I like about where I live is it's very diverse, because that's the real world, and that's the way people should just move forward in life and embrace each other's differences and actually their cultural benefits that we can learn from each other and enhance ourselves, enhance our lives from learning from other people. So that's one of the things that the South Asian community has brought to the table is their own life and their own culture and the way that they celebrate and the different holidays that they have. And it's something to embrace, really. That's the easiest way I can explain it. So that's something that I, have from the get-go when I got into office, and I certainly plan on continuing going forward. Support they might need for whatever it might be, whether it's the formation of committees, and which we've done in the legislature, to make sure that you are supported, that any of the groups are in all different cultural backgrounds are supported and have the connections they might need, have a seat at the table, so to speak.
Yes,
That's very
absolutely.
important. So we've definitely tried to do that in the legislature to the extent that that's something we can do. Whether it's along with the administration or it's on our own, we are sure to do that. So,
Should you get reelected for another term, what do you hope to accomplish?
well, I guess in a nutshell, I just want to continue to support the community. Another issue that I did tackle a while back, and that I can say we've all been pretty vigilant on, is the opioid issue that we've had, the opioid epidemic, some have called it the crises. And that, the numbers of deaths have they've decreased, which is good over time, but that takes a collective effort. And that's something I was going to say also. In the past term, I've been able to be a bigger part of just by, I passed an amendment to the social host law, which the social host law only had to do with alcohol in the past, and now this, I passed an amendment to include opioids and other drugs, and it basically holds a homeowner or the head of the household, so to speak, responsible if there is underage drinking or now drugging going on in the house.
wow.
So they have to do something about it. They can call the police, they can kick whoever out, is doing what they shouldn't be doing. But it's just another preventative measure to try and eradicate this problem. So that's something that I definitely want to, continue on in. We've had a lot of Narcan trainings. We want to make sure that the resources are there. We've passed legislation to provide some resources on an app, phone app.
Oh, wonderful.
So that, we reach a different generation and just easier. It's not the kind of thing people want to talk about usually. So if you can go on an app and get some help, no matter who you are, where you come from, then that's something we put forward, and that's now available. So that's a great thing that we've done as well. So I want to continue in that vein, and certainly in my role as chair of the Planning, Development, and Environment Committee, because we do have a lot of development going on.
Yes.
In Hicksville, actually,
Yes.
is one of the areas. So I'm kind of happy about that. That in my district, I have two areas that have received a $10,000 grant, $10 million grant from the state. For redevelopment. Hicksville's one and Westbury's another. So it's very exciting to see those changes happening. Communities are open to it, sometimes with a little persuading, but for the most part, everybody seems to be open to improving their areas. And Hicksville especially is one that has a downtown revitalization, plan happening right now. It's still in the works. I know in Westbury they're getting close to building, so it's
Well,
good.
that brings me to an interesting point. So Long Island is often seen as a place where people come to put down roots, to settle down, raise a family. It's the suburbs, right? So how do you, in your role, balance on one hand getting these grants for development, to bring in business, and also preserve the nature of what Long Island is?
Right, so that is a tricky balance, definitely. And that's one of the things when I said, some people have to be persuaded. That is the sentiment. People who've been here, they've raised their families here, whether they're grandparents or they're just the parents of today that have younger children in college or children in in middle school or just families in general. They want. What we hear so often is that the families want to stay here. They want to at least have the option to stay here. And one of the problems that's continually recognized is that it's expensive. So a lot of this new development is going to incorporate affordable housing, which is very important. I know in Westbury particularly, there's also considerations for veteran housing in the development. You know, there's certain amenities that'll be put into the zoning code so that a builder can come in and see, we can say, okay, you can maybe go another story higher if you'll agree to have, you know, 5% veteran housing or 10% you know, senior housing or something along those lines. So that is becoming, I think, it's more a trendy thing that's happening now, which is good because it's important. And people also, we're finding, you know, they don't necessarily want to buy a home.
Yeah.
A lot more people, I think, want to stay here, especially if they're a grandparent and they have the rest of their families here. They don't need to take care of a whole house anymore.
Yeah.
And it's now seen as something that, you know, makes a lot more sense. I'm doing with my own mother here. We're looking to get her into an apartment.
Yeah.
And she's willing to do it, and it'll be so much easier instead
Yeah.
of a whole house. So it's important that we make Long Island, we keep Long Island, let me say this, the Long Island we know with what we have here that we love, which is the access to the beaches and the parks, and you know, and you can drive down a street, although traffic's not getting any better. That's something that constantly has to be addressed, and that's
Yeah.
another thing
Yeah.
that I want to continue on doing, because you know, there are a lot of things that need to be looked at as far as the roadways, and first of all, you know, getting them repaved, and that's been
Absolutely.
happening, but it needs to continue. And then the problems that occur when you have more people on the road. And maybe encouraging people not to be on the road. A lot of
Public
the younger
transportation.
generation, yes, public transportation, they're not all as interested in having cars as maybe people
Yeah.
in my generation were. You know,
Yeah.
getting a car and your license were like, you had to do it, you have to do it.
As soon as you turn 16.
Yeah, so they're not really going in that direction as much anymore, which is a good thing. And they want more convenience. You know, they want to work near where they live, and vice versa, and maybe not go to the city, or not have to go to the city for 20 years. Maybe they go for 5 or 10, and then they can work locally. So we have to have the opportunities here.
That it sounds like a pretty comprehensive kind of iteration of what you're doing, what you plan to do. There's been rumors that, you know, this is a job that you've handled well enough that you may be looking to move down the road into a role of perhaps county executive.
Well, right now I'm running for this seat, and that's flattering if those are the rumors. You know, that's a nice thing to hear, but it just means people really appreciate what I do, and they see it as a benefit. And that's really what's most important to me here and now, is making sure I continue to do the things that benefit people. And listening to them is a big part of it. You have to hear what people want and what they need, and respond to it. And being responsive, I think, is probably 85% of the job.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
really getting something done for them. So
Especially in local government.
right.
Well, Laura, thank you so much for your time. In closing,
Thank you.
I'd like you to tell our viewers why it is that they should come out and vote in these upcoming elections, and how it is that they can get the vote out.
Okay, so I would love for you to come out and vote for me, and tell your friends and get the vote out, because it has been my honor to serve you in my last few terms, and I learn more and more every day, and I get to know more and more people in my district, and the better that I know you, and the better I know what the needs are of the communities, the better I think that we all work together. And I am exactly that, your representative, and I really do enjoy representing the people in my district, and I love helping people, and the satisfaction and fulfillment of this job for me is to know that somebody feels I actually cared, and that I stepped above and beyond, and I did everything I could to help them. Even if we can't always get the results that people want, it's just important that you know we're trying, and that we want to get results for you. And most of the time we can get them. So, you know, getting the vote out is so important this year. It's every year it really is, but, you know, because I'm running, I'm telling you this year it's really important. But no, we have early voting, so that's something that a lot of people aren't aware of. And if you are ready to vote on October 26th, you can start then, and you can go through to Election Day, and there's all kinds of diverse hours, and you can just look it up on the Board of Elections to get the locations and the hours that you can go out and vote, and tell your friends to vote and bring them along. And that's it.
Laura Schaefer, thank you so much. Laura Schaefer, the current Nassau County legislator for District 14, up for re-election. The voting starts on October 26th. Election day is November 5th. If you are a resident of Nassau County, make sure you take advantage and get involved in local politics. Once again, this has been a special segment of The Bottom Line. We've been covering the local elections on Long Island, New York this entire week, and we hope that you have some better choices or more information about the candidates that are up for re-election and election this term. Thank you so much for watching. This was a Jus Hindi production.